There we go. Growth and opportunity. So you guys ready to dig in? We're going to get dirty. We got 60 minutes. I'm not going to sell you anything. I'm not going to try to sell anything. This is just me just kind of putting it out there in the interweb world. And so just want to give you guys a chance to be able to take some of this stuff and leverage it. We are recording this. So if at the end of this, you want the slides and you want the video, we'll give you the link to all of it. So all you got to do is send an email to invisibleinsights@gmail and put in there a goal getter or goal accelerator, and we'll get those slides and the link to you so you can have those things. So, but I'm going to dig in and get my screen up there for you all. And so this is the stuff we're going to unpack. And so, hey, the goal is to have a breakthrough, to level up, whether you're going to thrive or you're going to really nail your purpose or develop your confidence, get some momentum or progress, build some success, unleash your vision or get some victory somewhere out there. This is the game. This is what I want to take you through. We have two halves to this. We got a half where we're going to get into some just general teaching, some things to understand. And then in the second half of this, we're going to get really practical and tactical and really unpack and dig into an actual, let's really unpack the whole idea of goals and everything that goes on with it. And so I'm Kevin West from Invisible Insights. I coach, train, motivate, inspire, and retain clients. I do everything I can to help them achieve everything they want to do. Here's the thing. I think Zig Ziglar says it best. What you get by achieving your goals isn't nearly as important as what you become by achieving your goals. And so there is a process of becoming. We get consumed by doing, and we're pursuing a lot of doing things, but it's really more about who you're becoming. It's really the person of interest that you develop into that attracts other people who are in some cases with you or even in some cases beyond you, but it surrounds yourself strategically with people in your life just because you're going somewhere, and people that are going somewhere attract people to them who are going somewhere. It's just that simple. And so when you have a game plan, when you're attacking the things that you're attacking and you're doing the things that you're doing, it moves people. People see it. People notice it. And so I want you to stand out in this endeavor. So the big thing we have to really understand here, though, achieving your goals is hard. It's hard. It's not easy. Everybody sets their goals, in the beginning of the year, and these things that they want to make a difference and do somewhat different and be better at, or whatever the list is. But here's the deal. Quitting day is 2 weeks. I saw in the commercial the other day, 2 weeks in is quitting day. It's when people just kind of give up on it. And I think there are a lot of reasons why. And a lot of what we're going to cover here coming up and going through this is just unpacking all of the stuff that can create sideways energy and hold you back. Because so much of acceleration cannot occur in terms of achieving your goals because of all of that sideways energy you allow into your life. And we just got to have good strategies to attack it. So we're just going to dig into it. But let me tell you what your biggest challenge is. And you kind of know what the biggest challenge is. But the biggest challenge in pursuit of your goals is, guess what? It's you. But here's the deal. The good news really is the biggest opportunity in the pursuit of your goals is the same answer. It's you. It is really about you working on you and being the best version of you. But let me lay out for you. I think there are really 5 key focal points to acceleration. And this whole process is really about this. But it's the end game we often don't consider. It is the one thing that sits at the end of us in the pursuit of our goals that we get, the byproduct of that, the outcome of that we don't consider in the process of doing it. We have very tangible reasons why we attack things, but we don't ever think about the invisible benefits. And so I want to unpack a little bit of that with you. And a lot of it goes through these 5 focal points, because whatever we're trying to do, and today's a whole idea of getting clarity and energy nailed down. But there are 5 focal points. The first is clarity. We have to get clarity. Clarity is the first thing we have to do. We have to know what we're about, why we're doing it, where we're going with it, and how this thing's going to go. And when we have clarity, it gives us energy. We get jacked up about it. And it is one of the biggest things that if you're an emerging leader in an organization, if you're an entrepreneur out there who's trying to figure out what that one thing is that you want to do, that niche thing that you want to make a difference, if you're a business owner who's trying to figure out how do I get my team aligned behind this bigger picture that I have in the back of my mind, let me tell you something. it lives in this world of clarity. And when you can really drive home this whole idea of clarity, you will have energy. And that energy is the excitement you have about, hey, listen, we know who we are. We know where we're going. We're knowing what we're about. I know who I am, where I'm going, what I'm about. All those things converge. But here's the crazy thing about it. It will always take you to a point of courage. It will always take you to a moment where you have to make a call, when you have to make a decision, when you have to do something hard that you don't want to do. But I'm telling you, it's often the things that we don't want to do is a big part of helping us become the person that we need to be. And so it's this journey that we have to go on. And there is a thing called action threshold. There's a part of a level of action that we need to take. There's a threshold, but we have to break through that. And the key is those three items: clarity, energy, and courage. When you break through that action threshold, then you can attack things. And that's where it gets into the productivity side, because the productivity side is really all about nailing down what your priorities are. And I'm telling you, if you're a business owner, you need to know what your priorities are. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to need to know what your priorities are. If you're an emerging leader, you not only have to know what your priorities are, you need to know what the business owners, the guy who you're following, what his priorities are, and they need to align. They got to match up, because sometimes there's organizational goals that you're participating in. So no matter what seat on the bus you're on, no matter what it is that you're chasing, these three things are always going to be part of the equation. And when you get to the priority side of it, that's when you start being set apart, because people who have priorities have capacity. That is a huge invisible. And so when you have that capacity and you're working on you, it becomes attractive to other people and they want a piece of you. You become a person of interest. And when you become a person of interest, you're not chasing people anymore. People are chasing you. You're not trying to get the boss's attention. The boss is trying to get your attention. You're not trying to really put yourself on the map out there in a big way, trying to make a splash. Listen, the splash is happening and everybody's seeing it. That is the outcome of working through these focal points. And that is a huge driver, and it's something that we're going to see lay out through this whole process on this webinar. Now, here's the thing we have to understand. We've gone through a lot of phases over the last few years. If you look at 20 and 22, there was just a lot of, things that were going on internally in us. We had to deal with a pandemic, which was scary. And so we were very much in this phase of being internal and secure and protective and all the stuff with that. And then we get into 23 and 24, where we kind of break out of that, but we're not clear from it yet. And then we saw some really good things happen in 2023. And then all of a sudden in 24, we're kind of wondering what's going on. But usually in those 2 years, we were like really trying to reach for things. We were trying to grasp and we did a lot of dabbling. And so in the 2022 world, we were kind of getting burned out. And in the 23, 24, even though we were like seeing a little bit of this and seeing a little bit of that and doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, we were kind of getting frustrated. But now we're in this world of going to another level. Now it's 2025. We've had a lot of changes going on, and there's going to be a lot more changes going on in the next 5 years at least, when we start looking ahead. And what's key about that is positioning ourselves. It's effectively positioning ourselves. And that's on all levels. And we're going to get into that more in detail later, but there is a performance window we're now entering into. There is a separation stage that we are leaning into, where we want to focus on mastering things. Well, not even just what we do, but probably the important thing is mastering ourselves. We want to get into a flow. We want to make sure we're actually have a pocket and a cadence. And what I mean by pocket's one of those things I use with my clients a lot of times, that I say, it's important that when we sing a song that we're on beat, and because it sounds right when we're on beat. And it's being in the pocket of the song. Listen, there's a beat in your leadership. There's a beat in how you do you. And it's important that the song you're singing in the middle of that matches the beat, because then there's congruence. And when those congruence things kick in, you get more confident. And that's a huge, man, I tell you what, you talk about something that's attractional. It's confidence. And so that flow, when you're in that flow, when you're in that groove, there's nothing like it. And you don't want to lose it once you got it. And so that is something I want to make sure that we're working through and talking about as we move on through this webinar, because it all starts with clarity, and clarity is the key whenever you're moving forward. And so, hey, enlarging your vision, positioning to go to another level in your business, leadership, or life, clarity is what we're talking about. And the other part of it is we have to have a level of clarity. And in order to have that level of clarity, sometimes we got to go backwards before we go forwards. Sometimes we have to look back and ask some clarifying questions, and some good, just basic clarifying questions is something I call the focus four. And it's a redundant thing. A lot of people that I've worked with, we do this all the time, and we continue to talk about it. And there's a reason why you want to have a pattern of talking about things, because if there are patterns over a number of years, either in your organization or in your life, you want to be able to identify those patterns. You want to make sure, especially if there's ones that aren't so good. But when you look up and look at last year, what do I need to clean up? What needs to be dealt with? When I look at what the new year's got in front of me, what do I need to follow up? I don't want any baggage along with me while I'm trying to pursue these goals, when I'm trying to chase these things I'm chasing. So what do I need to push across the finish line? What systems, what do I need to set up? What systems do I need to set up right now? What do I need to dig into? What structures need to be there to give growth opportunities a chance? And then lastly, where do I need to level up? Which is a great segue into the whole goal conversation. That's where it starts to get us excited. This level of clarity, when you get into level up, that's where the energy starts to kick in, because you start seeing it the way you need to see it. And that is so key, because so much of ourselves, we try to feel our way forward, and we're not really thinking intentionally and strategically about that. And we're going to get into that. So the key here is relevance. You got to care about the investment of time and energy you're giving to what you're doing. And that's where the action threshold breaks. When you care, I've been around people who believe things. Oh, I believe we need to do this. I believe it doesn't mean it's going to happen, because a lot of people believe in things they don't do. The key is when you care about it, usually breaks through that action threshold, and that's where you really kick in. That's where the courage lives that we talked about earlier. So you got to care about your investment, time, and energy. And when you go backwards and you get that clarity, when you go backwards and you feel like you've made peace with things from 2024, it's really, it's liberating. And now that energy flows into the level of courage to say out loud what it is you want to accomplish this coming year. So here we go. So we get into this, we start looking at the impact grid. Once we get those lists of everything that's out there, we want to weigh out that relevance. We want to make sure that, hey, there are certain things that have a lot of impact that maybe don't take a lot of effort. And there's probably some things that really, don't have a lot of impact, but take a lot of effort. You just want to make sure you're doing the right things. So this grid is just a tool. When you sit down and start looking at last year and making a list of the things that you got to work on, plot them on this grid. Start looking at how that plays into the priorities that you're setting, but how it informs you about what you really need to give your time to, and how much time and energy do you have to give it. So that's just a tool I want to share with you, because I think it's a powerful grid, and we need to revisit that all the time. So here we go. So now we're getting into some tools. So we talked about the concept of, what is that? What are the focal points? What are the things that are going on? Now let's get into some practical and tactical tools as we kind of run through this. So let me give you some stuff. So this is called the 5x50 productivity formula. And one of the reasons why I think this is one thing my coach, Brendan Bouchard, talks about a lot. And I've leveraged these in so many ways. And it's kind of funny, because when I share this with people, they almost laugh. They go like, well, if you had 50 times 5, that's the whole day. Well, I'm not like advocating you do them all day. What I'm saying is that there are certain aspects of each of these that you might want to adopt. There could be ones that are going to be really helpful to you in the process of you chasing whatever it is that you want to do next, or where you want to see growth at in your leadership in life. So in some cases, like the one I'm doing and I have been doing, actually, I've been doing it probably over the last year is 50 minutes more sleep. Actually going to bed has been incredibly productive for me. Like, and I don't go like, now here's what's crazy. I went to bed the other night at 10 o'clock and I woke up at midnight, thought it wasn't time to wake up in the morning. And usually I'm a later night person. So then I'm like wide awake. So there's a little bit of a like a transition kind of thing you got to do. I talked to a friend of mine and he was sharing with me, you might want to go to bed like 15 minutes earlier, be more incremental in terms of how you add sleep into your, and to get your circadian rhythms kind of dialed in. But it's just something. And here's the thing I learned. This is crazy. I learned when I started really researching it, there's a huge part of weight loss that comes in with sleep. I didn't know that. And I've been on this journey losing weight over the last 2 years. And this has been something that's like, okay, sleep is probably not a bad thing. I need to kind of be more into that because I'm always worried about what I'm not doing. So 50 minutes more sleep, 50 minutes morning planning power blocks. Now I'm telling you, I'm not good at the morning planning power blocks. I'm doing it at the end of a day. I'm coming at the end of a day and I'm planning my next day at the end of the day. I find that to work so much better for me. But it is a block of time that I set aside that's to help me run when I'm going into the next day, to be ripe and ready to go and get after it. Hey, 50-minute focus blocks. Listen, blocking time to do things and not getting interrupted. Turn that little focus thing on your computer so you can't get interrupted is a good thing. A 15-minute break. And here's what I mean by 50-minute break, because maybe it's a 30-minute break, but here's the deal. A lot of us don't like eat lunch. Like we are just running. And we can sing Just As I Am and have an altar call because I come up on that one because I'm the king of not eating during the day. But you got to take back lunch. It's one of my goals this year is to be improve my quality of lunchtime goodness. How's that the way to put it? So I'm like, hey, look, you know what? I need to take lunch. And the last one is 50 minutes of recovery and renewal. And sometimes that's, on a weekend even, it's just like giving some time for you. A lot of times we go into Saturday and Sunday and we're just still running. And it's important that we stop and just have some real time, like serious quality time with ourselves, by ourselves, maybe with a journal even, or just something to where we can get stuff out of our head. And that's a big deal. We often don't think about the cognitive benefits of that, but the productive byproduct of just getting stuff out of your head is exponential. So I would really encourage you, if you don't journal, even if it's on the weekend, do that on the weekend. I'm like that. I have to journal so I can sleep at night. If I don't get stuff out of my head, I can't fall asleep. So that's one of those things that I think it's really important. And going back to lunch, there's all kinds of studies that talk about how much more of quality work you do from just taking a break during the middle of the day. So I just want to encourage you to jump into those things. So your 5x50, pick yours, lean into yours, and do some damage on that. That's a big deal. Next is a Pareto principle. And it's a famous principle. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it just says 20% of what you do gets you 80% of your results. And a lot of times if I sit down and look at priorities with people, we're looking at what are those 20%ers. The 64-4 rule is just a more refined version of that. It is the 20% of that 20%. What is that one thing that only you can do that really moves the needle? What is that one thing that only you can do? And if you don't do it, that ain't going to get done. What is that one thing that really does that? And a lot of times getting someone to say that out loud, understand what the potential of that is and the power of what that is, not just for themselves, but for the people they lead, their family, it's significant. So it's definitely something that I want to encourage you to think about. The next part of it is the significant growth rule. If you've ever read the book, The Slight Edge, it's a powerful book about thinking big about small things. Small investments over time reap a benefit. But it also works the other way too. Neglect over time can hurt us as well. But the significant levels of growth just isn't in terms of the focus of what those small things are. And that's really, if you want to know the essence of everything we're going to talk about, The Slight Edge is one of those things. That's a shout out to Jonas and the team over at Chris Old Furniture. We just did that book study. And dude, it opened up some guys' eyes on the power of small things. So I highly recommend the book. I can't remember the author's name. John will pull up the author's name and drop it off. I'll make sure you get that, or we'll put that in the notes at the end. But just want to just encourage you. Hey, if you haven't picked up that book, that's a great book. It's a great read with your team too, if you have a team. But it's a good book individually as well. So next thing is quitting 101. And look, when we go backwards and we assess everything that's backwards and we're looking at that grid, there's just some things we just need to give up on. Some things that need to come to an end. Some things, and that's where courage comes in, because it's about saying no. And that element of saying no is very, very important to learn, because it's going to be key to acceleration. You can't carry everything with you. You can't get into some days and maybes and when we get around to, because all that baggage still hangs on you, and you won't be fully engaged when you have all that baggage in the back of your head when you're trying to accomplish new things. Just not gonna happen. So with that said, quit. Now, my coach has taught me the 45-day quit rule. So whenever you're doing something and it ain't working, 45 days, axe it. Get it off your plate. Get rid of it. So make sure whatever that list is, that it's in front of you all the time, so you're knowing what you're giving up so you can go up. That is key. With me so far? So hopefully you're all there. All right. So the last thing that I think it's the last thing is really this whole idea of prey drive. And it does come down to how you're attacking things. And this works really well with goals. It works well with attacking, the stuff that's on that to-do list that you want to clean up from last year and get out of the way. But it's key about setting intention and driving that intention, getting that level of activation there, sustaining the level of intensity that it takes. Sometimes that intensity leans into courage, but it's really that level of focused energy, and it keeps you going. And then lastly, the key of all of it is persistence. And I just want to make sure that you know what's going on that end. So when you get the slides, this is one you might want to camp out on for a little while and grade yourself. Hey, how intentional am I? What level of activation am I activating correctly? Am I setting the right kind of schedule and timeline for what we're needing to do? Is the intensity there? Some things require a lot of energy and work. And are we sticking with it? Are we getting through this? So that's a key aspect of this. And I'm talking fast. I got to blow through these slides. I want to make sure we get this done in time. But let me unpack some of the enemies here, because we definitely have some enemies of acceleration. And the key is, these are procrastination, fear of failure, self-doubt, perfectionism, lack of clarity, negative self-talk, lack of discipline, imposter syndrome, overthinking, fixed mindset, not a growth mindset. These are all things, listen, probably all of us can nod our head and confess to some of these things that sidetrack us. But let me give you a little something I think that you can do to really attack this. And you have to, the key is assessing your enemies. And so in the book, The Art of War, it says, know your enemy better than you know yourself. And so this is called a 3-2-1. Hey, what are 3 questions I have when it comes to procrastination? What are 3 questions that I have? What are the things that catch me? What does that look like? What are those 3 questions you have maybe about that one enemy? The second one, or what are 2 concerns that I have? I have 3 questions. Now I have 2 concerns. I have 2 concerns that sometimes my procrastination is wrapped around perfection. I'm trying to get everything right, or I have to know everything before I can do anything. And it slows everything down. So if those are my concerns, my concern is that, then what's my one focus? My one focus is I have to have a real robust plan, a proactive, strategic, intentional plan to make sure that I do not fall for the procrastination thing. And so I might need to add someone in my life who brings some accountability to me to push me forward, or have some things that I'm going to say out loud to somebody that I'm going to do by a certain amount of time so they can ask me about. Whatever that is, you need to attack it like nobody's seen. And that goes back to the prey drive. We need to activate the prey drive, get the intention, activation set, get all those things dialed in, get that intensity nailed in there. And then obviously that last part is being persistent and staying with it. So, all right. So we're still rolling here. We're moving through all these things. So the key words: strategic, intentional, and disciplined. Those are the three words for 2025. We're going to blow through these things. We're going to stay focused. We got to be here. We got to be on this. And my coach gave me those words, and I'm telling you, man, they're game changers. So let's keep rolling here, because we got to keep, we have to understand ourselves in the concept of the bigger picture here. We're going to get to goals very specifically here in a little bit, but I want us to really have context, because when we have context about the level of clarity we need to have going backwards before we go forwards, the level of, understanding about what our enemies are, and know that we have a toolbox and we can work through that toolbox. Now we're in this part of like, okay, where are we at? Like, I don't know where to go if I don't know where I am. So let's just break this down real quick. Most of us are, if you look at the circle on your left, it's success level 1. We've experienced the level of success in our lives. We have these things in our lives where we're competent, where we're certain, where we're safe. And when we're competent, we're certain and safe, we love that. I mean, we're creatures of that. But then there's this other part of it where whenever something new comes along, we kind of push back away from it. When that level of discomfort comes in terms of what we want to accomplish, sometimes we're trying to protect ourselves. We're trying to perfect what we're doing. We're trying to maintain and keep what we got. And there is a level of conflict and struggle that we have to go through when we want to go to that bigger idea, which is on the right. But the problem with the bigger idea on the right, that thing that we feel like we need to do, this new success level, this thing in there, everything within us fights against it. That protection piece, that perfection piece, we got to hold on. If I do this, what will happen? Fear gets in, and fear always operates on 3 things: loss, less, and never. And so when you get into that fear dynamic, it starts throwing you sideways. So why am I signing up to be incompetent and uncertain and criticized? Because if you're going to another level, if you're going to jump into something bigger, you're not going to have all the answers. That's the season of growth. That's where it all happens. And yes, is there ability to risk there? Yes. Are you going to be thrashing in there? Yes. But in the risking, in the thrashing, you're going to experience growth. I'm doing that right now with something that I'm pursuing in another arena that is challenging me in a way that I've never been challenged. It's way outside of everything that I'm doing in coaching. And it's more about this thing that's happening to Kevin, and it makes me incredibly uncomfortable. And I feel stupid every time that I get around those people. I feel like I just don't have the goods. And I keep telling myself, dude, I just got to be okay with this. I got to be okay with this. This is key to what's next in my leadership and in my life. Listen, you have a version of this. You have something that if you don't do it, it won't get done. And I'm telling you right now, if you're in success level 1 and you're fighting through that whole conflict and struggle to get there, to be okay with being incompetent and uncertain and criticized, you need to break through that wall. That's where the action threshold lives. It lives in that struggle. And we're going to paint that picture even more clear here in a sec. Because what's key is there's this whole bridge we go over when we go from success level 1 to success level 2. There's this bridge. I'm going to call it the Epiphany Bridge. Because all along the way, you're going to have these epiphanies. And every level you're going to go to always requires something new from you. We just have to understand that. And so we may not have what we think we need. And it's going to be okay. And that sick feeling you got is real. And it's important that you have it. Because it means you're alive and it means that you're on track. Everything that you don't want to have is all the indicators that you're exactly where you need to be. And that's the part for some reason, no one wants, especially when you have big goals, when you have big dreams, when you have things that you want to accomplish. So this is part of this Epiphany Bridge. And so on this Epiphany Bridge, it looks a little bit like this. There's the hamster stage. There's the striver stage, the achiever stage. Then we go through the struggle. We break through the action threshold. Then we get into the connector stage and the attractor stage. This is stuff when we talk about goals, achieving things, and really being in that mode that no one talks about. But we're going to talk about them here. That's why this is an accelerator, because when you understand the dynamics that work behind the scenes, you can smooth the path. You can find all the workarounds, all the things that make all the difference, because you know where you're at and you know where you're going and you know what phase you're in, and as you're working through it, you can understand it and dial in. So let's look at this. So the first phase is the hamster phase. This is where you're just on the hamster wheel. This is that phase where you've done it and you messed up and you done it and you messed up and you done it. Listen, that was me for I don't know how many years trying to lose weight. That was not trying to lose weight. I was sitting there going like, I was trying to diet. I was trying this thing and that thing. Remember where it said dabble in frustration? I was in the dabble and frustration phase. I was dabbling. I would be on, off, and I was talking about it with everybody like, yeah, the fitness and I'm running and all the, blah, 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 you know, and like really not making any progress, you know, talked a good game, you know, but nothing was really happening. And so that hamster phase is just one of those phases that we all go through. It's important to understand that because we have a real clear picture of where we don't want to be. But then all of a sudden we get into this next phase called the striver phase. And then the striver phase, that's where we get determined. That's usually where I went to the doctor, and the doctor had some very important news for me. And he's going, Kev, you got to buck up, pal. And so I'm in the car, and I'm all jacked. I'm like, yeah, we're going to do this. You know, and we're like, you know, and then you get it, and now all of a sudden, like for 6 months, like I'm on it. I lose about 5 pounds, and then all of a sudden, it's like I'm running out of gas because it's just all me. It's all me. They're like, and I'm just out to prove it. I'm not saying anything. It's all isolated and alone. And then once we get through the striver, we get into this achiever stage. We got some success in the striver level, but now in the achiever level, now it's kind of like a little bit of like that. There's a little bit of confidence. Like I know what I need to do. And an achiever is like, we go through that one big push where we experience a lot of success, but it's not sustainable. We experience, we achieve, we check off a box, and then we go right back to where we were before. I'm raising my hand. I'm telling you, I'm the guy. That is my story. Like that was my story all the way through everything I got into. And then I finally got into this struggle. I finally decided to embrace the struggle. And that's when I hired a trainer. That's where eventually the pain of staying the same was greater than the pain of change. And that whole threshold, that action threshold lifted up and I'm done. And a lot of it, for me, it was an age moment. It was a moment where, you know, I heard someone say this, you're going to die. Someone said, give me 3 words of motivation. He said, you're going to die. And then he said, you're either going to die alone or you're going to die giving life. And then I realized we don't have grandkids yet. We don't have a lot of things. Like, I got to get on this. And so then it was like, all right, what do I need to do? Hire the trainer, get real serious, and the level of discipline really kicked in. I needed to honor the struggle. That's what my coach says all the time. He said, Kevin, you got to honor the struggle. You got to honor the struggle. And that's where I dove in, and I said, all right, then guess what? It's time to get serious and connect with some people. I started building, I got with a group of people. I got in the gym. I started building some friendships. I could not do jack. You talk about being incompetent. I couldn't even do a squat. I had to hold on to a rubber band and go up and down on a rubber band because I couldn't even do a body weight squat. And so, and hey, I'm just bragging here, but my last time I squatted, Jeff, if you're out there, baby, I love you, man. So 195 pounds, baby, 8 times on a squat. Dude, I was jacked. And I tell you what, it might have shaken, it was all that, but it's exciting. You know, it was like I walked out of there even more engaged. But that connector stage, having support, having people with you, having your story being written alongside everybody else's story is powerful. And you need to do that. And a lot of times you can find that in the mastermind group. You can find that. That's a shout out to Arvind out there driving along. And you can find that in the mastermind group. You can find that in friendships that you build while you're on the journey. We all have friends. We all have circles of influence. It's really important that you lean into that and get that on the record, because the last part is this. The last part is you become an attractor. Once I started, actually people started seeing the changes, they had questions. And what it did is every time I answered a question about the progress I was making, it reinforced the work I was doing. Hear me on that. Every time I answered a question about what was going on, it reinforced everything I was doing to get there. It just made that even stronger. And that's where it's not about bragging. It's just telling your story. It's just like, you've set yourself apart. People know you're going somewhere. They just want to know. They want a piece of you. And that's that whole influencing. That's becoming a person of interest. So this whole idea of goals is far, far bigger than just losing 10 pounds. This is more about the person you're becoming in the process of it. And that's the part I want you to make sure you get here, because you're not going to accelerate if you don't have that picture in the back of your mind. So, what are some practical tacticals here? Okay, well, here's the deal. We all have, from a very practical and tactical thing, areas that we need to look at in our lives. So here's what I want you to be doing. So if you got a pen and paper handy, this is one of those things where I want to challenge you to get dirty a little bit. But you might want to think about 2 things for each of those areas. It doesn't mean you're going to do them all. It just means you need to get them out of your head. So much in the same way we went backward before we went forward, now I need you to go forward. I need you to be in the moment and in the future at the same time. So when it comes to relationships, what are 2 things in 2025 that you want to make a move on, that you want to advance? What does that look like in your wellness? Maybe in an area of service. Maybe you're not volunteering at your church. Maybe it's time to start volunteering at your church. Maybe it's time to get involved and build some relationships. Or maybe at your church, when it comes to relationships, you're not in a small group. Maybe it's time to get in one, and be around other people. When it comes to growth, setting time aside to read and get into reading and growing and journaling. Maybe it's finances. Maybe you don't have a budget. Maybe it's time to bust out some Dave Ramsey and take, Financial Peace University and get yourself on. Maybe it's your craft. Maybe there's just some things when it comes to getting skill in terms of what you do for a living. Your skills need to go up. I have a lot of CEOs who go like, Kevin, I need to work on my people skills. I literally had this last week. I spoke at an event last weekend. There were over 300 Amish business owners there, which was way cool. And it was neat for them to talk with them and the questions they were asking and the things that was potentially going to impact their lives and their business, just from the whole idea of them saying, I got to be better at people. I got to be better at leading. I got to be better at reinforcing good things or celebrating. There was this, and it's all small things like we talked about the slight edge. And so family, do you have adventure in your life? Is your relationship with your kids and your spouse where you want it to be? I'm spending some time here, folks. Okay. We're on the clock. I'm trying to burn rubber on this, but I want you to know that these are all areas that you need to be considering. Because then when you go to the grid and you start saying, hey, where does this fit on the grid? You're going to be setting your priorities. And there are some priorities in here. There's things. So it's real easy to come on this whole thing and go, you have something in mind. And all of a sudden realize when you look at all these things, hey, wait a minute, there's some things more at stake here than maybe even what I was thinking about. So I want to challenge you really to be thinking about those things. What are the needle movers that you need to have going on in your life right now? Because that level of relevance, the things that you care about, will help you break through action threshold, which is the one thing a lot of times that we can't break through because it's just a thing. We're just trying to do, I want to read more. Like, no, that's not, we'll get more in detail here in a second on what that stuff looks like. So with all this in mind, we just need to assemble this thinking into a framework. And so as we kind of process this, it really just begins with assessing the past and the current state, clarifying, and we're going to use the word aspirations. What I want to introduce to you is the concept of primary aspiration theory. And I want to just unpack some of those things because there is a lot of, I think, I don't want to say wrong thinking. I think that we just have some mixed up thinking when we consider what goals are. And so I want to unpack that whole idea. So this is the part where we sit down and go, hey, Kev, this is where we're going to identify and clarify the primary aspirations for 2025. And so I want to get under this whole idea of what an aspiration is, because there's such a critical relationship between them. Goals and aspirations sometimes get confused. And what I mean is, like, if I say I wanted to lose 70 pounds, that's really not a goal. Losing 70 pounds is an aspiration. I aspire to lose 70 pounds. The goals are much further and smaller. And so when all of a sudden I set my aspirations, it informs my goals. It starts to set out what those things are. But let me throw something at you. So on your paper, if you're writing right now, I want you to write down what's my aspiration. Maybe you're asked, so in my case, I'll use myself as a case study. Hey, my aspiration was, hey, I want to lose weight. I want to lose 50. Actually, I think I started, just wanted to lose 50 pounds. So that's where we started. And then I realized that's an aspiration. So then I started looking at, well, what's the real outcome from that aspiration? You know, my whole thing is I want to look in the mirror and like myself. That was one of those things. I would walk by store windows and see myself. I'll never forget this, guys. Don't laugh out loud, please. But I remember one time I was with, little kids at church, and I was doing this thing, and there was a bunch of pregnant ladies, and little boy asked me if I was pregnant. And dude, that was not a good day. Okay. That was one of those, like, I laughed it off and everyone laughed, ha ha ha. And then I got in the car and went, that's bullcrap. Like, we're not going to let that, like that. I got to do something about this. I had this big old, my way I do weight was like this, my belly just sticking out a mile. And I was like, all right, we got to figure this out. And those are the kinds of things. Trust me, it moved me in the care dial, went way up on that. But the aspiration was lose the weight. The outcome is I want to be able to see myself, a reflection of myself, and like what I see. I want to see progress in my life. I want to see vitality. I want to see energy. I want to see all those things that really excite me and inspire me. I want to see those things. And as I articulated that outcome, now the caring started to warm up. The level of me caring about it really got down because I wanted that in game. I wanted what that was. And then I started digging into my goals. And so as I started digging in my goals, after I laid out my aspirations, I put those down, I then started saying, okay, then now there's some goals here. Now my goals, I learned I had to realize that I had to break my goals down to the smallest denominator. The goals in general were get a trainer, work out every week. Those were bigger rocks. I wanted to work out twice a week was my goal. So I did, but here's the thing. I had no idea that food is really where you lose weight. Like, I thought you just went to the gym and sweated and then you dropped pounds. Hey, I don't want to pop anybody's bubble, but that ain't it. And then when I started getting around the trainer and he started educating me because I was incompetent, he started saying, Kev, this is the food, how you have to do food going forward. And I started getting an education in macros. I started getting education in calories. I started getting education in some of the additives and things that I was letting into my system that was making me inflamed and all that stuff. And once I started getting rid of the inflammation and started doing those things, I started seeing the progress. But here's the deal. My goals were just these big things like go to the gym every day and do the thing. And I realized immediately when I started putting them down there, they weren't different than the ones that used to didn't work. And that was the part that was, all right, something's got to change. And then all of a sudden I started bumping into primary aspiration theory. And primary aspiration theory says, hey, set your aspiration, nail what the outcome is, then list out your goals, and then break your goals down into very small moves. So my very first move was to basically set my clothes out the night before. Every night I was going to the gym, Tuesday and Thursday, I set my clothes on the floor by the bed. That was my first move. My second move was set my alarm clock for 7 a.m. My third move was feet on the floor at 7. That means get out of bed, no hit the snooze, none of that. Those are my first 3 moves. But here's what was crazy. This was crazy. If I did those 3 things, guess what happened? I went to the gym. If I put my clothes out, if I put my shoes by the bed, if I set the alarm clock and I put my feet on the floor when the alarm went off, I didn't have a problem getting to the gym at all. And all of a sudden, the goal started to take life. A goal is an active, living, breathing thing that you continue to pay attention to and you track as you move forward. It is not a box you check off. It is, I'm constantly making the moves. Every Tuesday night, every Thursday night, I'm making those moves. I'm doing those things. I want to make sure that I am putting my clothes out. Now, here's the thing. Then it was, hey, put your shoes on was another move. And then it was like, okay, well, I put my shoes on, I tied my shoes for sure. I'm now going. Like everything that built on that. And it even went to the point of asking questions. Like I wanted to make sure that I didn't go to the gym and act like I knew what I knew what I was doing. I said, all right, so today I'm going to ask two questions each day that I'm at the gym. There was a process. And what was cool was my trainer jumped on and he started to see what I was doing. And he says, okay, we're going to start out with the smallest moves in the gym. And then pretty soon we added weight, and we went from there. And then he said, well, Kevin, if you really want to lose weight, you got to learn about food. And we went into that. Those two goals were I lost 70 pounds. You want me to tell you how long it took? 2 years. And it's about how long it took me to put 70 pounds on, by the way. And so what I learned in this whole deal is like, hey, there's a mindset here. I'm not going back. And I know whatever goals you have, whatever aspirations that you're thinking about writing down right now, or you've already written down, and you start putting those goals on paper, now you're starting to think for each goal, there has to be 3 moves. What are the smallest beginning moves that you can make that you can continue to move forward on? Because you can control the controllable. You can stay on that small thing. Our big mistake that we make is we set this goal. It's this big behemoth of this thing. We have no idea how we're going to do it. And then we just wing it. It's not going to happen. You're not going to accelerate. And every time you get momentum, every time you push through that, you can't go back into the hamster wheel. You can't go back into Striver. You can't go back into Achiever. You got to be now circling up with others. And you got to be able to connect with other people. You got to schedule timelines. You got to regularly evaluate. In my case, every week I journaled about what I ate. You should see, I took a picture. One of my moves was take a picture of everything I eat every day, every meal, and send it to my trainer. And then he would say, why do you have corn in there? Listen, I just realized you can't have a whole lot of corn. So I didn't know that, but I know it now. And so I didn't realize there were some enemies to weight loss. And there are all those things that I love. And it doesn't mean I don't eat corn once in a while, but I'll tell you what, the better I felt, the easier it was to do it. And so you got to evaluate, you got to determine your next moves. And I'm telling you, this is big. This is really big. So make sure you set a timeline and you evaluate. But guess what? We don't stop there, because we often think about, we overestimate what we can do in a year, and we way underestimate what we can do in 5. I think Tony Robbins says that. But here's the other thing we got to do. We got to get the other brains in the game, which means we got to tell other people. We got to tell our friends. We got to include people in our lives in this. And I call it asks and tells. There are certain people you need to ask to hold you accountable. Now, remember, accountability isn't getting in trouble because you don't do something. Accountability is the willingness to be asked. That is what accountability is. Remember that. It's that openness. Now, I'm going to get defensive when my wife goes, is that butter on your potato? It's like, what? Were you the butter police? It's like, no, that's not like that. It's really about being, hey, I'm just going to be open. I'm going to give her permission to ask. And does it ruffle my feathers sometimes? Yes, it does. Because I'm trying to cheat sometimes. Sometimes I want that cheat, and sometimes I don't. But it's the ask. And then the last thing, it's the tell. And the tell is just getting in front of people and just saying, this is what I'm pursuing. Here's my aspiration. Here's this outcome. Here are my goals. And here are the moves that I'm making towards the smallest little things. And when you can accumulate those small things, you make those 3 moves, you get those things going. What are the next 3? What are the next 3? And keep building on moves. Then your goals take place. Take your eyes off the goal. Keep your eye on the moves. Focus on the moves and get going on that. And so that's really, really key. So the outcome, obviously, of a great goal is who you become in the pursuit of it. Your confidence goes up. You got momentum. You feel good about that. And that's the part where it all jives in and hits it hard. And so I don't know if you guys want to type some questions in the chat, if you have any questions, but I just want to make sure we have some time, at least here at the end, to kind of hear a couple things. I hope some of this stuff was helpful and it gives you some parameters and some guidelines for how you can attack things this year. This is your year. This is the year you lay out those aspirations, you nail that outcome, you lay out those goals, and you hit those moves. And the only story I want to hear isn't about the goal you set, it's about the moves you're making. That's the only story I want to hear. And so if you're sending me emails, if you're sending me stuff and saying, Kev, this is what we're working on, good. I want to celebrate the moves you're making. And then the goals are just this, it's a byproduct. It's just the goals happen. You don't have to like have that constipated look on your face trying to figure out what to do next. You just know what that is. So looking at the chat here, I don't know if I can get into chat or if John, or you're out there, if you can help me with that, or I don't know if I can hear anything or if we're going to unmute some folks. I'll do my best with the headphones on to answer any questions if anybody's got any. Fire away, or John, you're coming in. So John's monitoring the chat for us. So, all right, John, you got anything? Did anybody fire off anything? Nothing at the moment. Hey, then that means I did my job. So I just want to make sure that you guys are winning out there. And I'll throw a couple things that I get a lot of times when I talk about this from folks. One of the biggest things that people ask me about is like, especially if they're trying to set goals for a team, they're kind of saying like, how do I motivate? How do I get the team to care? You know, I care about this goal, but I don't know if my team cares about that goal. And I can honestly say that if you include them, and again, this is part of the ask and tell dynamic. If you bring them around the table with you, the 5 most important words in leadership are people support what they create. And so when you pull people around the table with you and you say, this is the aspiration, this is the outcome, is there anything I'm missing in the outcome? Let them speak into the outcome. Because the more that they speak into the outcome, the more they will connect with that idea. And then when you start saying, hey, you know what? I want to set some goals around this. Can we set some goals around potentially, you know, what that outcome would be? Like if this is the aspiration, I need to come up with some goals. Will you help me do this? And the more that they speak into what those goals are, and then you can ask them this really cool question. In light of accomplishing these goals, there are moves. Are there any moves that you can contribute to, that you can play a part in making this move? Are there any moves I could like share with you that you can have some moves to accomplish? Because if we all have moves, because it could be a big goal, right? It could be a sales goal. If you got a sales team and you're going like, hey, what are the moves that each of us are going to do to make this goal occur? And if this goal occurs, we move towards our outcome. And if that outcome is everybody gets paid more, which is like everybody, like they dig that outcome, then it's like, hey, let's work on this together. Let's all be on the same team, on the same page, accomplishing this. So that's a team aspect of it. The biggest challenge for us as individuals, again, it's getting out of our own way and rethinking this whole process of what goals are. Because that's the thing, you're going to have to be okay with being incompetent about this and uncertain and criticized. And so the more you go into something that you don't know anything about, it means that whole idea of connecting with others who are further along than you and asking them questions, it means you get to be a student. Yes, it's a humbling process, but it's a necessary one, because then they are aware of what you're doing. They can be winning your sales in so many ways, support and everything. I've had that, and I'm watching Arvin driving along here. Arvin and I had that in our mastermind group where there was so much support, genuine support and willingness to help one another because we understood what journey we are all on. And, you know, and everybody in that group had these huge aspirations. And yet whenever we got together, it was really powerful to be able to reconnect those with the moves we're making. What are the things we're doing, and how are we, you know, working towards developing and moving forward on those moves so those goals get achieved. So I just want to really drive that home for you. I want you to have 2025 to be the best year ever. And I want it to be strategic, I want it to be intentional, and I want it to be disciplined. And I want that for you. And so let me give you the link here. If you want to get the slides, I'm going to throw it up here. Hey, email goalgetter to invisibleinsights@gmail. You can get all the slides. You can play with the slides, and then we'll even give you the link. The video will be uploaded on a platform. We'll get that to you so you can access it and you can watch it again and dig into it if there's anything, because I talked really fast. I was burning rubber through the beginning on that stuff. So, but again, I just want to encourage you. I want you to have a great 2025, and I want to thank you so much for being here and being a part of this. And I cannot wait to see what you got going on here. So, Rendo, it's good to see you on there. I'm trying to see everybody out there. Thanks for being here. And do some damage. Hey, if you do think about it when you send the email, tell me what your goals are. What are your aspirations? What are the things that you're breaking down, and what moves are you making? So may the force be with you all. Have a great day. And hey, next month, guess what? Next month, we're talking about networking. Your network is your net worth. And so we're going to talk about the strategies and invisibles behind networking. And I think that's going to be probably third week of February. So we'll send out links to that so you can check it out. And we will have some really good stuff for you. So everybody, it was tremendous. Thank you so much. I see you all in there. And stay after it, do some damage, and rock and roll. Have a good one, everybody. Take care.